The date is Tuesday, March 23. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The existing ban on direct flights from the United Kingdom has been extended to April 13, 2021. Prime Minister Andrew Holness gave an update on Sunday during a virtual press conference. He also reiterated the government's position on the need for COVID-19 tests for travelers.
The existing ban on direct flights from the UK will be extended to April 13th, 2021. Travelers from the United Kingdom coming through other countries will be required to test on arrival and await the test results in state quarantine at their own cost. If the test is negative, they will be required to complete the rest of their 14 days quarantine period at home. If the test is positive, they will remain in isolation until they recover.
The Jamaican government had imposed a travel ban in December 2020 in response to the spread of a new strain of COVID-19 in the UK. Time now for the latest COVID-19 clinical management summary.
So yesterday evening we would have confirmed 36,231 cases, of which 760 were imported cases and over 35,000 locally acquired cases. We recorded 542 deaths. The case fatality rate is 1.5%. We have 19.9 deaths per 100,000 population. And if we exclude the imported cases, it would be 19.5 deaths per 100,000 population. The daily positivity rate then would have been 37.1%, with a cumulative positivity rate of 13.6%. Right now, we are recording 6,230 active cases. And by active cases, I mean that cases that would have been confirmed over the last 14 days. Remembering that after 14 days of isolation, persons would have been released if they have no symptoms from isolation. This is what the picture looks right across the country, and you can see that all parishes and most communities within all parishes are affected with active cases, that is, cases that have been confirmed over the last 14 days.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness and his wife, Member of Parliament and the Deputy Speaker of the House, Liat Holness, were vaccinated in Kingston on Monday. The island began its immunization drive on March 10 when the first dose of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine was administered. Carol Francis has the details.
Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness and opposition leader Mark Golding received vaccines against the coronavirus COVID-19 on Monday, March 22 at the Good Samaritan Inn in Kingston. The first to arrive was Mark Golding.
Good afternoon, Mr. Golding. Are you afraid of the needle?
No.
After going through the standard round of pre-vaccination questions, Mr. Golding was vaccinated. Shortly after, Prime Minister Andrew Holness and his wife arrived at the Good Samaritan Inn.
It's one of the vaccines that were tested and approved. So today, you'll be receiving the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
The vaccine was developed and produced by a team from Oxford University and the British-Swedish pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. Having already received his vaccine, Mr. Golding shared a jocular moment with Mr. Holness.
Best of luck. Good one.
The Prime Minister and his wife were given their first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Vaccine is given to our Prime Minister, and it's 0.5 is the dosage.
Prime Minister Holness, who said he did not feel a thing on receiving the injection, is urging all Jamaicans to get vaccinated.
Take the vaccine when your time comes. Do it orderly. We don't want to see a spike in the numbers as a result of persons going to take the vaccine. Because remember, even after you have taken the vaccine, there is a period of time for your immunity to build. So during that period of time, there is still a potential. And then if there is if there are too many persons gathering at the site, let's say persons did not get through, then they would have been exposed. So it has to be done in an orderly way. And I know the challenges of the distribution of anything that's scarce. There are persons who believe that it might run out and they don't get, so they want to come to the end of the line. So I want to assure all Jamaicans that the government is putting in all the effort necessary to ensure that we have a steady stream of vaccination, of vaccines, and that the vaccination process can go on without being broken at any point in time. So you will get your vaccines, and the schedules that have been put out in terms of persons who have been given times to attend for their vaccines, those will be met.
He also encouraged Jamaicans to continue observing the COVID-19 protocols, including social distancing.
I just want to say that the numbers will continue to rise if we do not observe the protocols. It is in our interest at this point in time to restrict our movements. If you do not have to go somewhere, stay at home. Only move for reasons that are productive or essential. If you don't have to go out, stay home. If you have to go out, wear your mask, maintain your social distance, your physical distance, which is not happening here, by the way. But somehow we will ensure that all the journalists get their vaccines with the group that would be considered essential in terms of government workers. So I've gotten a letter from the PAJ, and I am going to ensure that the journalists who are so recommended by the PAJ, that they get their access to vaccines.
The symbolic significance of the country's leaders being vaccinated helps to reassure citizens that the COVID-19 vaccine is safe. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Carol Francis.
Jamaica is the first country in the region to benefit from the World Health Organization WHO-backed COVAX facility, a global effort for equal distribution of vaccines. However, the WHO says its efforts to secure more doses for its partners is being strained due to vaccine hoarding by some countries. Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, explains in this report filed by Melvin Pennant.
Jamaica has received 14,400 doses of the COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX facility. Those, along with the doses received from India, covers only 1% of the country's population. Meanwhile, some countries have already covered more than 10% of their population. Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, is again calling for steps to be taken to close the distribution gap.
The gap between the number of vaccines administered in rich countries and the number of vaccines administered through COVAX is growing every single day and becoming more grotesque every day. Countries that are now vaccinating younger, healthy people at low risk of disease are doing so at the cost of the lives of health workers, older people, and other at-risk groups in other countries.
He says the inequitable distribution of vaccines is not just immoral, it's also economically self-defeating.
Some countries are racing to vaccinate their entire populations while other countries have nothing. This may buy short-term security, but it is a false sense of security. The more transmission, the more variants. And the more variants that emerge, the more likely it is that they will evade vaccines. And as long as the virus continues to circulate everywhere, anywhere, people will continue to die. Trade and travel will continue to be disrupted. and the economic recovery will be further delayed.
The WHO boss is urging rich countries to share their vaccines with low-income countries.
I have had conversations with leaders from lower-income countries whose economies are suffering and who are asking when they will get vaccines. And I have had conversations with executives from vaccine manufacturers about how to ramp up production. Recently, for example, I spoke to the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soriot, about the shared challenges we face in ramping up production and rolling out vaccines.
There are other vaccines being developed and sold, but so far, AstraZeneca is the only company not profiting from its COVID-19 vaccines during the pandemic. Melvin Pennant, PBCJ News.
More than 16,000 Jamaicans have recovered from COVID-19 to date, but hundreds of people are being infected. The Ministry of Health and Wellness gave an update at a virtual COVID-19 press brief on Tuesday. Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton says more than 24,000 persons have been vaccinated during the first 10 days of the inoculation program.
The number represents some 52% of our target for the month, which is some 47,650. And of course, we're going after 1.9% of our population. Still early days. Our 1.9 million persons. Our first vaccination blitz is set for this Saturday, March 27th, 2021, at the National Arena.
Persons are being reminded that registration should be done online at the ministry's website or via telephone at 888-1-LOVE. Meanwhile, Permanent Secretary in the ministry, Dunstan O'Brien, responded to questions regarding the missing vials of COVID-19 vaccines from the Cornwall Regional Hospital in St. James.
So the Ministry of Health and Wellness have completed the audit. The report is with us in executive management and has been circulated for management response. Now, the process around audit is that the audit findings are discussed, and after the audit is tabled, management has to provide explanation to some of the findings in the audit. I must also report that the police have begun their own investigation into the vial, and they are also preparing their own report and to determine whether or not any criminal charges will be laid.
St. Thomas Parish Court is closed until Monday, March 29, 2021 as a result of COVID-19. During the closure, bail applications are to be transferred to the Supreme Court in Kingston, where they will be heard. For further information, members of the public are encouraged to contact the Court Administration Division at 876-754-8337 or visit their websites. The nation's 2021-2022 budget debate is set to close on Tuesday with Minister of Finance and Public Service Dr. Nigel Clark making his closing arguments in Parliament. The Finance Minister, who opened the debate, presented the budget with a national expenditure of $830.78 billion Jamaican dollars. Also has the privilege to speak last as he closes the budget debate. Here are some highlights of addresses from the debate so far to bring you up to speed. The budget debate provides the government with the opportunity to measure its progress in relation to targets previously set and assess the effectiveness of its management of the country's finances. Minister of Finance and the Public Service Dr. Nigel Clark opened the debates on March 9. He painted a picture of a challenging but definite financial recovery while giving the opening address at Gordon House.
The closest comparisons were the decline of 6.5% in 1975, 5.7% in 1980, 4.6% in 1985, 3.9% in 1974, and 3.2% in 2009. None of these, Madam Speaker, was remotely close to the economic contraction that we have all lived through in 2020. It took 4 years between 2016 and 2020 for the Jamaican economy to add 100,000 jobs. This is one of the most painful graphs. It took 4 years to add 100,000 jobs, as you can see, from 2016 to 2020. And in 4 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, over 130,000 jobs were lost. Madam Speaker, the Jamaicans who lost jobs in the pandemic could fill every seat in the National Stadium 4 times over. When we talk about economic recovery, therefore, we're talking about eventually. But the good news, Madam Speaker, is that you see, you just keep that graph, that the quarter ending October, the number of employed jumped, and we expect that and hope for that to continue.
Opposition spokesman on finance and the public service, Mr. Julian Robinson, made his contribution to the debate on March 11, followed by Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Mark Golding, on March 16.
The cost of saltfish, cooking oil, chicken back, and rice, as examples, have increased by over 100%. And Madam Speaker, I want to show you what we mean by the food insecurity. Prime Minister never bring the basket. Never bring the basket. But I want to show you the price increases. Chicken back, $60 in 2016 is now $140, an increase of 133%. Cooking oil, $85 in 2016 is now $220, an increase of 158%. Tin mackerel has moved from $55 to $100, an increase of 81%. Rice has gone up from $31 per pound to $62 per pound, an increase of 100%. And sugar has gone up from $55 per pound to $121, an increase of 120%.
Madam Speaker, this is therefore a time of immense danger for our country, but it can also be a time of great opportunity. We should use the lessons presented by this crisis to reset the status quo rather than just yearning for a return to the ways of the past. We must identify new and better ways of tackling the challenges that impair our national progress. Only we, all of us together and united, can decide whether we learn from the crisis or we yield to the crisis as we face the future.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness presented his almost 4 hours long presentation on March 18.
These crises have tested our mettle as a government and as a people, but we have shown courage, dexterity in management, and incredible resilience, of which we can justly be proud as a country. I am confident that we will recover faster, stronger, and better than before. Even though we lost $2.5 billion in foreign exchange earnings from our tourism export, and I use it in that way, because it's an export. We don't think of it as an export, but tourism is an export. That there was only a marginal increase in the difference between our total inflows from exports and other earnings and what we spend on imports and other outflows. This shows an economy that is developing the ability to absorb shocks. Our net international reserves have been maintained at a robust level of over $3 billion. The amount of public debt has remained flat over the year despite the massive fallout in government revenue and increase in government expenditure. Madam Speaker, Jamaica is among only a few countries that have been able to achieve this. Governments globally issued a record $16.3 trillion in new debt in 2020 and are expected to borrow another $12.6 trillion this year. So countries are borrowing to cushion the blow of the pandemic.
When the debate closes, the House passes an Appropriation Act, which gives the government the authority to operate the budget. After the House of Representatives has passed the Appropriation Act, the act goes to the Senate for approval. Global oil prices slipped on Tuesday. We get this plus other key market news in this quick business report.
In Monday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index declined by 888.44 points to close at 431,000 points. The Junior Market Index advanced by 21.83 points to close just under 3,000 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading of 48 stocks, of which 20 advanced, 21 declined, and 7 traded firm. Market volume amounted to 8 million units, valued at over $47 million. Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited was the volume leader with 2.4 million units, followed by the Siboney Group Limited with 2 million units, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 1.5 million units. And these were the foreign exchange rates for March 22. The US dollar ended the day's trading at $146.25, having lost 17 cents. The Canadian dollar lost $2.10 to sell for an average $117.80. The British pound sterling lost 15 cents to trade at $204.64. And the euro gained 67 cents to trade for $177.94. There was a slump in oil prices on Tuesday. This was brought on by a wave of coronavirus infections, a fresh lockdown in Germany and the United States, and European sanctions over China combined to curb risk appetite worldwide. Brent crude oil futures lost $2.25 to sell for $62.01 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures is now $59.11, a barrel having lost $2.09. And that's the business report. I'm Carol Francis in for Gabriel Thompson.
In regional news, across the region, we begin with Trinidad and Tobago. Between January 2019 and January 2021, the Twin Island Republic saw a 3.1% increase in food prices. Head of the Department of Agriculture, Economics and Extension at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Sharon Hutchinson, says the country is just below the global average of 3.4%, which she says is a good sign. She was speaking during a webinar at the Food Price Challenge hosted by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Mahalia Joseph Wharton of TTT News has more.
Though Trinidad and Tobago has seen a 14% increase in the price of grain for animal feed, head of the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension at UE, Dr. Sharon Hutchinson, said there isn't a global grain shortage. She explained that there is an increase in exports and production around the world. The problem, she said, is that this country is being left out of that supply chain. Dr. Hutchinson said the 14% increase will still have a visible impact on food prices.
Consumers will have to make very many choices about substitute goods available to them. So if the price of ghee goes up, for example, consumers will now have to start thinking, is there any substitute for ghee in my basket?
When it comes to substitutes, President of the Supermarket Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Rajiv Dipti, said in the past, brand loyalty dissuaded consumers, but this is no longer the case.
Now, with regards to the increase in feeds, to be honest, we're at the supermarkets, we're price takers, we're not price setters. That it's a situation where if our suppliers are telling us that these prices are going up, then we'll have to put it out to the market at a certain price point.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries Clarence Rambarat noted the supply of basic food items like rice, sugar, oil and flour were largely uninterrupted from the start of the pandemic.
What we saw with the grain issue, particularly for the livestock farmers, is what lies ahead of us. And the challenges as countries erect their own barriers, they become more sovereign, they become more inward-looking, they want to ramp up on storage, they want to compete for shipping and loading at terminals and so on.
Minister Rambarat said there has been some increase in prices, but there continues to be supply availability. Mahalia Joseph Wharton, TTT News.
There is a call in Barbados for Mayor Muttley administration to do more for Bajan Liat workers a year after they were dismissed from the regional carrier. The call comes from opposition leader Bishop Joseph Atherly. We hear more in this Barbados Today report.
Government is being urged to assist former Liat employees in Barbados who are now struggling to make ends meet after a year of being dismissed from the carrier. The appeal was made by opposition leader Bishop Joseph Atherly in Parliament yesterday. He said the government of Antigua and Barbuda has been speaking on the matter, and in his opinion, it's high time Barbados's voice was heard.
I start with the reality that these people are Barbadians, and that something more must be done, should have been done, should evidently have been done, should apparently and obviously be done in their interest. We don't have to shout across the Caribbean at one another, to make sure that we speak with loud voice and that our message is understood. We don't have to have a shouting match across the Caribbean to make sure that our voices are heard in other jurisdictions concerning our interests on behalf of our Barbadian people. Now, if an arrangement unfortunately has been generated by an understanding among governments who operated this entity, then a second reason is constituted as to why Barbados should be strong and loud in what it is saying in the interest of these Liat workers. And not only strong and loud in what it is saying, but also obvious and evident in what it is doing on behalf of these Barbadian workers.
Adding his voice to the protracted non-payment of severance by the failed carrier, Bishop Atherly pointed out that next month will mark a year since the 100+ employees have been out of work. He said due to no fault of their own, the workers are left to suffer both the indignity and the hardships associated with the plight of being unemployed and uncompensated.
My understanding is that these people were given, Mr. Speaker, a one-off payment of $2,400 in August of 2020. $2,400 in August of 2020. That brings us to, what is it, 8 months now since then? $300 per month for the last 8 months. That's less than the minimum wage that you're proposing. $300 per month for the last 8 months. You think you can live on that, Mr. Speaker? I suspect not. $300, a one-off compassionate payment. $300 for the last 8 months. Now, a few of them have had NIS responses to their plight, but the majority of them, and there are 100 of them, have not, because, Mr. Speaker, by arrangements made prior to their service, arrangements between the partnering governments in Liat as an enterprise, a regional enterprise, though an Antiguan company registered in Antigua. Arrangements made before they would have started their tenure, their service. The NIS had to be paid in Antigua, and not in Barbados. Therefore, the complexities of the situation, a limited liability company in Antigua registered their national insurance paid in Antigua as opposed to being paid in Barbados, puts them at a serious disadvantage, which has brought about serious hardship and stress. If the government cares, the government needs to shout more loudly. The government needs to be more proactive in what it is doing to redress this situation and ensuring that these people are helped.
In sports, we look to cricket. South Africa is slated to tour the Caribbean in the near future. However, Jamaica looks uncertain to host the visitors due to the country's COVID-19 spike. However, the Jamaica Cricket Association, JCA, CEO Courtney Francis is optimistic that consideration will be given for Jamaica to host another leg of home games later in the year. News recently emerged that the proposal for a tour game at Trelawney Stadium and a test match at Sabina Park when the South Africans visit will be transferred to Trinidad and Tobago. The Twin Island nation had already been designated to host a part of the series. And that's the news. Thanks for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station. Stay safe.